So what if I told you that the billionaires, the massive multinational corporations, and like the political overlords that you think are running the world
Right.
actually have zero absolute power over you?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd on its face, right? We feel the weight of these systems every single day.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at the modern world, it feels like standing at the absolute bottom of this massive skyscraper and just looking straight up, you get this overwhelming sense of insignificance.
Oh, totally. Just tons of steel and glass pressing down on you.
Right. Thousands of tons of it, dictating the layout of the streets. And, you don't question the building. You don't try to move it. You just sort of submit to its physical reality and walk around it.
And that feeling of powerlessness is kind of the default human experience right now. We just accept that these massive structures, whether they're global financial markets or tech monopolies or political establishments,
Yeah.
they just shape the landscape that we have to navigate.
But then you step into the world of sociology and psychology and global power dynamics, and suddenly, that unmovable skyscraper isn't actually made of steel at all. It turns out we're looking at a structural landscape that is entirely dependent on us collectively deciding to hold it up.
Yes, that's the core of it.
So welcome to this deep dive. Our mission for you today is to decode a highly provocative body of work that we've been reviewing. It's titled Power, Shadow, and Structural Control. And honestly, it is a masterclass in the hidden mechanics of the world.
It really is.
We're going to unpack why you might feel like you are at the mercy of powerful forces and the very uncomfortable but surprising truth about how that power actually functions in reality.
Yeah, and the central premise here, it just immediately shatters our default assumptions. Because, I mean, we typically attribute world power to external forces, right? We look at those with the most concentrated wealth.
At billionaires.
Exactly. We point to the people who make the largest scale decisions, the ones who control the flow of capital, and the institutions that shape the policies we all live under.
And we assume that power is just a one-way street. Like a CEO retires or a politician leaves office, but the system just keeps chugging along. So their power appears completely dominant.
Right.
It operates at a scale that makes us feel like we're just dodging that massive skyscraper. But here's the massive pivot the source material makes.
Yeah.
This dominant power, no matter how monumental it seems, is not absolute. It is entirely relational.
That distinction changes literally everything, because absolute power would mean it has force regardless of what you do. Gravity is absolute.
Yeah, you can't negotiate with gravity.
Exactly. You can ignore gravity all you want, but if you step off a ledge, you will fall.
Yeah.
Relational power, on the other hand, means its very existence depends on a dynamic.
Right.
It requires a relationship between the person holding the power and the person submitting to it.
So it doesn't just exist in a vacuum. The authority requires our active or maybe passive participation to even function. But I guess if power isn't absolute, we have to figure out why it feels so completely inescapable. Like if we're not actually trapped in a steel cage, why do we all feel trapped?
Well, to understand that illusion, we have to move our focus away from the external world of money and politics for a moment. We have to look into the internal world of human psychology, and the framework introduces this psychological concept called the shadow.
Okay, now when people hear shadow, they usually think of like spooky Jungian psychology, right?
Right.
The dark, repressed, evil desires hiding in the subconscious. But in the context of structural control and global systems, it's actually much more mundane than that, isn't it?
Oh, much more mundane, but incredibly consequential. So in this context, the shadow refers to cognitive offloading.
Okay.
It represents everything that is unrecognized, unclaimed, or just not consciously engaged with by an individual or a group. It's the parts of our daily actions that we are completely blind to out of sheer convenience.
So we're basically talking about convenient ignorance.
That is the perfect way to phrase it.
Yeah.
Think about the systems you interact with every single day. When individuals or groups don't understand the mechanisms they are participating in, when they operate in the dark, they become subject to those systems without even realizing it.
Let me ground this in a real-world example because this was a major light bulb moment for me when I was reading this.
Go for it.
So think about a standard retirement account like a 401k. Most of us get a job, the HR department gives us a packet, and we just check the box for the default, target date index fund.
Right.
We do it because reading a prospectus is incredibly boring,
Yeah.
and we just want to save for retirement.
Right.
That is our shadow. We cognitively offload the financial literacy.
And what happens to that money?
Right. That money doesn't just sit in a vault somewhere. Right. By checking that default box, millions of us are collectively pooling trillions of dollars into the hands of a few massive asset management firms.
Trillions.
And those firms then use our money to buy up massive stakes in major corporations. And they use the voting rights attached to our shares to dictate corporate policy, influence governments, and basically shape the economy. We hand them the ultimate power simply because we, couldn't be bothered to look under the hood.
Which creates the exact experience of being controlled by something external and more powerful. We look at those massive asset managers and think, look at these overlords controlling the world.
Yeah.
But it's not that the financial system is forcing you against your will. Your lack of awareness acts as a form of submission, your unrecognized participation. Your shadow is the literal fuel for their structural control.
See, I have to play the role of the skeptical learner here and push back a little.
Okay.
Because hearing that is deeply frustrating. I mean, isn't it completely exhausting to be expected to be fully aware of every single system?
It is.
We live in a highly complex society. It's like driving a tank, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to know how the combustion engine works or how the alternator functions or the chemical properties of unleaded gasoline just to get to the grocery store.
Right.
I just put the key in the ignition and I drive. Why should I need to have a PhD in global financial mechanics just to exist in the world?
The friction you're feeling there is entirely valid, and I'd say it's the core tension of modern society. And the car analogy is actually the perfect way to look at this. You are absolutely right that you don't need to know how the engine works to drive the car.
Right.
But if you don't know how the engine works, you don't just pay the mechanic when things go wrong. You effectively let the mechanic dictate the terms of your mobility.
Okay, wait, unpack that for me.
So if the car breaks down and you have zero understanding of the machinery, you have no agency. The mechanic can tell you it costs $5,000 to fix a critical component, and you just have to pay it.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
Right. We all have. But taking that a step further into systemic control, if you don't understand the infrastructure, the mechanic can also tell you that your car is only allowed to drive on certain pull roads, or that it only accepts a specific, highly expensive type of fuel that they just happen to sell.
Wow.
Because you are blind to the mechanism, your ignorance might buy you the convenience of just turning the key, but that convenience is the very currency that buys your subjugation.
My convenience is funding their control.
Yeah.
That is a stinging realization, but it perfectly illustrates the mechanism. If I blindly tap my credit card or blindly click accept on every terms of service agreement without reading how my data is harvested,
Exactly.
or if I blindly follow a career path without understanding the economic machinery behind my industry, I am literally handing over my agency.
You are feeding the system with your participation. But because it happens in your psychological shadow, you feel like a victim of a giant machine rather than the person actively shoveling coal into its furnace.
So if our internal shadow makes us this vulnerable, how does this actually combine with the external world to create these untouchable elites? Because we often think of the bosses or the overlords of society as these brilliant masterminds.
Yeah, the text strips that mythology away entirely. The perception of an all-powerful overlord emerges strictly at the intersection of three specific layers.
Okay, 3 layers.
First is obvious, it's external wealth. It's the concentrated capital, the literal boardrooms, the raw resources.
Stuff we can see and usually point our pitchforks at.
Yes, but that external layer is completely impotent on its own. It has to intersect with the second layer, which is our internal shadow. The public's willingness to let the engine run without looking under the hood. External wealth meets internal ignorance.
Right, and then there is a third layer that locks the whole thing in place, which is our collective fragmentation.
Exactly. That's the core mechanism of stability for these systems. You have a small group with concentrated resources and a massive population that isn't paying attention to how the machine works. And because the population is operating in the dark, they are fragmented.
Right. Everyone is just isolated, trying to pay their own individual bills, manage their own individual debt, and just get through their own individual day.
Yeah.
There's no collective coordination among the public.
So the people at the top aren't necessarily brilliant strategists outsmarting us at every turn. They are just highly coordinated while we are highly fragmented.
Wow.
The institutions work together to maintain the status quo, but their real linchpin, the thing that ensures their survival, is dependency. People rely on financial systems, employment structures, and governance frameworks just to function. You need the bank account to receive your salary.
Yeah.
You need the corporate platform to reach your customers. You need the 2-day shipping because your local stores have all closed down.
And this brings up an analogy that completely changed my perspective on this when we were prepping for the show.
Oh, the traffic one.
Yes. Has you ever been stuck in a massive bumper-to-bumper traffic jam, just like slamming your hands on the steering wheel, furious at all the cars blocking your
We
way?
all have. You feel trapped by the traffic.
Right. But the uncomfortable truth is, you aren't in a traffic jam. You are the traffic jam. Every other driver is sitting there furious at you, too. You are the mass that is creating the blockage.
Yeah, exact.
And that is exactly how systemic power works, according to this framework. An overlord isn't a comic book villain sitting in a hollowed-out volcano lair stroking a white cat. An overlord is just a position within a system.
A position sustained entirely by our participation.
Yes, the system's stability and the authority of the people at the top of it is reinforced by our daily reliance on it. If the billionaire CEO steps down today, the system doesn't collapse.
Not at all.
Someone else just steps right into that vacant position tomorrow because millions of us are still demanding that the system process our credit cards, deliver our packages, and manage our retirement funds. We are the traffic. We are holding up the skyscraper.
And that means power persists most strongly where there is unconscious participation. They hold power because we unconsciously sustain them. Which leads us to the ultimate question.
Right.
If our unconscious reliance is the glue holding this massive power structure together, how do we dissolve the glue?
Well, our instinct, especially when we feel like victims, is to reach for a hammer, right? In every movie, the solution to an overlord is overthrow and destruction.
Yeah.
You blow up the Death Star, you storm the castle, you burn down the corrupt institution.
Yeah, but burning it down doesn't actually solve the problem, does it?
Yeah.
It fails completely because if you burn down the institution without addressing the underlying dependency, the public will simply build a new institution to replace the old one, and a new overlord will take the seat. The framework is very clear on this point. It argues that the only true solution is integration.
Not overthrow, not destruction.
Right. Integration. Conscious relationship.
Integration over destruction. I mean, that is a massive paradigm shift because destruction is highly emotional. It's a reaction to feeling utterly powerless. But since we've established that the power is relational, you don't actually need to destroy the other side of the relationship to change the dynamic.
Yeah.
You just need to change your side of it.
And that process of integration requires a fundamental shift in how we engage with the world. And it begins with the simplest yet most difficult action, looking under the hood of the car.
Removing the mystery.
Yes. We have to recognize how systems of money, influence, and decision-making actually operate. It means acquiring financial literacy, understanding how data brokers sell your information, and learning how local civic policies affect your neighborhood.
Right.
You don't have to become an expert in everything, but you have to shine a light into that psychological shadow.
And once you see the mechanics, you are forced into the second, much more uncomfortable realization, which is acknowledging your own personal participation, letting go of the pure victim narrative.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
It really is. It means looking in the mirror and saying, I am choosing to use this massive banking conglomerate. I am choosing to buy cheap goods from a supply chain I know is exploitative. I am the one clicking accept.
It requires immense self-awareness, but that self-awareness is the gateway to actual freedom. Because once you own your participation, you can start doing the real work, which is reducing your unconscious dependence.
Increasing agency.
Yes. You might not be able to completely unplug from the financial grid. I mean, we all still need to buy groceries and pay rent.
Sure.
But you can become intentional about it. You can diversify where you bank. You can support decentralized platforms. You can learn to repair things instead of immediately buying replacements from a monopoly. You actively shrink the dependency mechanism that gives the overlords their leverage.
It makes me think of trying to deal with a massive, tangled fishing net. When you're caught in it, your first instinct is to just thrash around to try and smash the net with a hammer out of pure frustration.
Right.
But smashing a net just leaves you exhausted and tangled in ruined rope.
Thrashing is pure reaction, and the system is designed to absorb your emotional rebellion. If you just get angry and rebel without clarity, your rebellion usually just gets commodified and sold right back to you.
Wow, yeah. But if you sit down, look at the net, understand how it's woven, and start carefully untying the knots, you aren't just escaping. You're dismantling the trap, and you get to keep the rope to build something new.
Yeah.
It shifts you from being a helpless victim crushed under a machine to being an active, conscious node in a network.
And this is where the framework makes a massive promise about the future. Because if we align our behavior with clear, conscious intent, and we do it collectively, untying the knots alongside others who are also waking up to the system, the actual structure of power
The
shifts.
skyscraper transforms.
It does. What once looked like sheer domination, a towering, unmovable force pressing down on society, transforms into a web of relationships. And a web is something you can understand, you can navigate, and most importantly, you can influence. Which leads to the final, incredibly profound thesis of the material. When participation becomes conscious, power becomes distributed.
When participation becomes conscious, power becomes distributed. That completely deflates the myth of the untouchable elite.
Absolutely.
They're only untouchable as long as we remain asleep at the wheel. The power naturally flows downward, distributing itself among the conscious participants of the network.
It's a deeply structural view of society that places the ultimate responsibility and the ultimate capability right back in the hands of the individual.
So bringing this all together for you listening, the main aha moment here is that systemic power isn't a weapon being pointed at your head. It's a relational dynamic that you are currently perhaps fast asleep in.
Right.
Waking up to your role in the mundane systems of daily life where you put your retirement money, what platforms you allow to harvest your data, how you source your daily needs, is the ultimate act of reclaiming your agency. You aren't just a cog in a machine. You are the fuel holding the whole thing together. Change the fuel, change your machine.
But as we look toward the future, this dynamic introduces an incredibly provocative final question, something for you to mull over as you step back out into the world.
Let's hear it.
We've established that these massive structures only exist because of our unconscious participation and our deep reliance on complex systems, right? Our shadow.
Right.
But look at the technological trajectory we are on right now. What happens as we increasingly rely on artificial intelligence to manage our lives?
Oh, wow.
We are building AI agents to manage our finances, negotiate our contracts, curate our information, run our daily logistics. If we hand over the keys entirely to AI out of sheer convenience, does delegating our participation to machines make our shadow permanent?
Right, because we're even more detached.
Exactly. Does it cement the overlords in their positions forever because we are no longer even tangentially involved in the systems that govern us?
We effectively build a new layer of the skyscraper that we can't even perceive.
Or is there a counter possibility? Could AI act as the ultimate light shining into the shadow? If we use these tools to map out these incredibly complex financial and political networks, translating the dense prospectuses and the convoluted supply chains into plain language, could AI force us to see the systems clearly, finally untying the knots for us and radically accelerating the distribution of power to the individual?
So will the technology build the skyscraper higher? Or will it finally hand us the blueprints so we can dismantle it? That is a fascinating thread to pull on. And the next time you look up at one of those massive corporate skyscrapers, just remember it's not holding itself up. You are.